welcome to a very special edition of the Lockdown Sessions presented to you by Wrestling Travel. Today we have Martin Goldsmith with us. Martin, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Be very interesting.
Very interesting. We want to talk about a lot of things. I know Big Cal has been trying to set us up with you for a long time, and it just so happens we've got you coincidentally on the week that WWE is having SummerSlam. So, of course, one of the many things that you're known for is bringing WWF at the time over to the United Kingdom, but particularly SummerSlam 92. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that.
Okay.
But I want to start back at the beginning, kind of how I always do at the Lockdown Sessions. You're into event promotion.
Correct.
So how long have you been?
How long?
Yeah, roughly.
40 years, 45 years, I can't remember, you know. A long time. In the golden days. We were there in the days of the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd and David Bowie and Genesis when they were all kids. They're now old men like me, but that's when we started. Our business started basically. It was all about a T-shirt. That's what it was all about. And we as a company, I had a company that was not even, we weren't in the entertainment business, we weren't in the music business, but we were in the business of exterior displays for shops. In other words, we used to put up window displays in the stores in London, and very highly, you know, high level stuff. And then one day, a friend of mine said to me, do you know anybody who can supply me with 500 yellow T-shirts? I said, I haven't got a clue, but I'll make a few inquiries. So I then made a few inquiries. Nobody had any 500 yellow T-shirts. And I found a printer, another friend of mine, and I said to him, have you got any yellow T-shirts? I need 500. And he said, yes, it just so happens I do have 500. I said, great. I said, he said, what do you want them for? I said, they're not for me, but they're for a friend of mine. And so I was looking around his print factory, and in those days, it was all kind of hand printing. It wasn't these massive machines that we have now. It was kind of like that kind of stuff. I said, what the hell are you doing there? He said, well, I'm printing T-shirts for some bands, and they're selling them. Well, I had a vague idea that in America, the world of kind of psychedelia was taken off. So this tells you a date period, you know, the days of the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane and all that kind of stuff. And the world of kind of psychedelia art went on to posters and T-shirts. So he was kind of printing stuff for a band whose name I can't remember. And anyway, I gave the shirts to a friend of mine, and then I had this idea: why am I not in this business of the world of T-shirts? So I looked around and I found an artist who was very big at the time. He's still around. A guy called Gary Newman. I don't know if it means much to you, but anyway, I contacted his management and I said, why don't we do some T-shirts for you? And the guy said, oh, that's a good idea. You know, why not? We'll sell a few T-shirts here and there. So I said, okay. They gave me the artwork. I gave it to my pal, who was the printer. He printed the stuff up. And our very, very first gig was in a very tough part of the UK, Glasgow. So we drove up to Glasgow, all excited, you know, with my van load of T-shirts, and the kids at the venue started buying them like crazy, you know, thought, wow, this is fantastic. And all of a sudden there was a huge eruption when all the guys who'd put the shirts on, put them over their heads, and they actually disintegrated. Can you imagine? Because the bloody printer had overcooked them and they just fell apart. That was the first, so obviously it was a complete and utter disaster. I fell out with the artist, I fell out with the venue, and obviously I fell out with the printer. But anyway, I didn't want to give up. So I contacted a guy called Cliff Richard, who's a world-renowned artist. And I came up with the idea. I said to Cliff, why don't we print some T-shirts with your face or an image on it and sell them at your shows? And his words were, who in the hell's going to wear a T-shirt with my face on it? Anyway, 70 odd years later, they're still being sold, believe it or not. So by then, my brother, his name is Harvey, he became probably one of the most famous, left university. So instead of getting his degree, he decided, or he should have been a pharmacist, but much against my father's horror, he decided to become the social secretary at Sussex University. And so he started a book, The Rolling Stones and the Pink Floyd and Rod Stewart and all those kind of guys. Maybe they got £200 each if they were lucky to play at the university balls, the social secretary every week. You know, he gave up trying to be a pharmacist and decided to become a promoter, along with the father of. Now, what's his name? Of the manager of a band called Genesis in those days, right? Genesis were just starting. They started to tour. And, you know, we both got into business together and we spent the next 20 odd years touring with every name. Give me a name and I'll say we'd work with them. You know, every band that toured into the UK and sometimes worldwide and sometimes just in Europe. And that was very, very, and obviously the business and the word of T-shirts became the word of merchandising. So we became not only T-shirts, it was souvenirs, it was books, it was everything. It was licensed products, it was toys, posters, or anything you can think of. And now, obviously, the world of merchandising is worth billions and billions of dollars throughout the world. So that's how it all kind of started. Now, anyway. That's that story.
Now, this is Gary Newman of the song Cars, if I'm right.
Correct.
All right. I just wanted to let you know I knew where you're at.
Tubeway Army.
What, now, wouldn't those T-shirts be, I see vintage T-shirts around here.
Yeah.
Those, if you had a Gary Newman T-shirt that did not disintegrate, it's probably worth a few dollars now, right? A few pounds.
Yeah, maybe a few pounds, but there's certainly more. You know, things like the very first Bruce Springsteen show came over here. Then we had Cream, you know, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, and all that lot, and then Grateful Dead, all those kind of things. I know there is a market for vintage T-shirts, and believe it or not, it's something I've never got into. But lately, I have been going through our warehousing and old cupboards and finding lots of treasures, lots of them, which we're now probably in the next few months going to let out onto the world, because some of the stuff is quite remarkable, you know, but it's been lying in warehouses doing nothing for many, many years.
So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah. You know, when you think about vintage means today, really, because people are still buying those vintage designs, you know, from the 60s and 70s. They're still buying them. And lots of walls have still got the old posters on them. In fact, the other day I found a bundle of original Woodstock posters in my loft, believe it or not. I knew I had them, but I didn't know where they were.
That's so crazy to the average guy like me, sitting there going, well, all the stuff that you might be sitting on that the rest of us are jaws dropping into you. It's like, yeah, that was my job. Exactly. I worked on that part, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at home now, but I've got Woodstock stuff some here, you know, lots of stuff here, which is always interesting to collectibles. And I even found this the other day. Oh no, I'll show you something interesting. You might like this.
All right.
Can I get up?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't have to be a genius to know what that is.
Wow. Unbelievable. A little Sgt. Pepper from the Beatles.
That is the very first edition that they printed 100 of these, and that was That's on my wall. I paid nothing for it, really. You know, it's worth £1,000 now, you know. And it's the original, very, very first edition of all that stuff. And as I walk past here, there's some other horrible looking thing on the floor. Absolutely disgusting. See that brand?
Yep, I love it.
TNA. Anyway, okay, ask me a few questions.
Well, now that I see the Sgt. Peppers, do you have a, you mentioned working with Rolling Stones. Do you have the Rolling Stones album art of Some Girls that had everybody on?
I do. Funny enough, I do have, oh no, Some Girl. Which is the one with the zip on it? Which one's that? Had like a zipper.
Yeah, that's different. That's, I don't know what that one's called, unfortunately.
I've got,
Unzipped or something.
no, I haven't, I've got some of it in the office. And also a poster of the Stones in Cow Palace, Texas, which was fantastic artwork. And I've got that as well somewhere. Interesting, isn't it?
Being a promoter of like these concerts and music, are you able to, once your hard work is done, I mean, are you able to enjoy a concert here and there that you've promoted?
Here and there, yeah. Here and there is the words. I mean, mostly I'm sitting around the back worrying or arguing with the manager, or you know, he's not happy, or the sound's not right, or this and that and the other. You know, with the catering you supplied, yeah, it was great, but you know, the lead singer, he wanted green sausages and he only got yellow ones, you know, and things like that. Or he asked for Japanese noodles and you gave him Chinese noodles. What the fuck are you doing? And all that kind of rubbish. But then, and how much money have you taken on T-shirts? And you tell them and give them a figure. What? Don't believe you, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, you have to put up with all that stuff. And the artists usually are the least problems because their mouthpieces are the ones that always give you the aggravation. But saying about enjoyment, yes, I enjoy concerts. You know, seeing Stevie Wonder playing in a bull ring in Spain was one of the great outstanding times. The first time I ever heard Luciano Pavarotti, you know, fantastic, you know, absolutely wonderful. Bands, obviously Pink Floyd. We did a thing called The Wall, which was in Berlin. That was an iconic event, and many others. And some of them, regardless of what's going on backstage, the music generally always wins, nearly always wins. So, you know, and I've sat down and watched some of the stuff, and other stuff I've just been standing around and still enjoying it, you know, because I'm a music man. Although my real love is jazz. That is my real music. So I met Miles Davis. We promoted Miles Davis. He was a horrible man. He hated us, but he hated us even more when we had a reception after he played with his back to the audience. By the way, he played with his back to the audience. A reception, and he came into the area where the party was going on. He took one look at a table which had watermelon on it. Right now, to a black militant person like he was, to serve him watermelon was an insult. Well, we didn't know, we had no idea. It was a hot day, that was great for us. He took one look, turned around and walked out, and that was the end of that one. But he was a great musician, still a great musician.
My father drove tour buses, like just for people going to, you know, sightseeing. But one time he was all excited. He got me, I rode along in his bus. He got to drive, the concert was Three Dog Night, America, and the Beach Boys. And as a child, I adored the Beach Boys. So I got into the back of the concert as a kid, which I thought was cool until I realized I'm not going to see any of this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So,
well, we never worked with the Beach Boys, but I love their music. Fantastic.
Oh, I love it. It just
certainly the original
stands the test of time, as do a lot of it, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead. No, you go, please.
I'm just saying, when you think today, we still have to rely on the old stages, the old guys, to fill the stadiums, you know, and when we're talking 70, 80,000 people, it's the guys who've been doing it for many, many years are the ones that sell the tickets the quickest, you know, and very few of today's artists can do that. You know, there's a few, obviously, Ed Sheeran and people like that, great exception, you know, but mostly the touring industry relies on legends.
Now, have you worked with an Ed Sheeran?
No, never worked with him. We did a charity. He did a charity concert for Teenage Cancer Trust, which he appeared. It was at the Albert Hall, and he just did his set, and that was great. It's the first time I'd ever heard him. You know, really good, brilliant. Right, wrote some great songs, and he's one man and a guitar, and that's it. You know, brilliant. Can you imagine how much money the guy's earning when he sells 500,000 tickets?
Crazy. And it's crazy if you look back at a guy like that who was, you know, on his own, getting every gig he can, playing 400 or 500 times a year.
Yeah.
Twice on Sundays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, coming from my, where I am in the Midwest, and I know it's not that big in the United Kingdom, but I'm curious, have you worked with any country music artists?
Well, we did how many years ago? 5 or 6 years, or maybe a bit longer. They brought over a country music festival in London, and everyone said it was going to be a failure. It was never going to work, but it did work. And whoever I can't remember the artists actually, but whoever those artists were all kind of legends in that world, and they sold it out. And that festival has now expanded to Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia, and the UK, and it happens every March. Of course, it didn't happen this year, but it's got bigger and bigger. Yeah, bigger and bigger, no doubt about it.
So I suppose since we're wrestling travel, we should maybe, as much as I could talk music with you all day, I better talk a little bit of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of that thing.
You probably told the story a million times. About how you got into, but give us a brief for those that don't know that might be watching.
Well, I was aware that professional wrestling was gradually making a bit of a space in the States, coming out of the fairground situation and small time local halls, and gradually getting into a bigger market, mainly because it was on TV. So we had a discussion, and I was aware that I think there was a big event coming up in Miami at that particular 84, 85, something like that. So I said to Harvey, I said, why don't we bring in the World Wrestling Federation? He said, you're mad, that won't sell. It only sells in small town halls, because that's what it is, you know, small arenas, World of Sport Wrestling and all that kind of stuff. Big Daddy and Jackie Pello, although that had departed, gone. So I said, well, I think it could be big business. He said, well, okay, all right. Anyway, so I made an arrangement. I contacted Vince McMahon and Linda personally, not through the whole myriad of executives, because they didn't have any in those days. And I made an appointment to go out to Connecticut and sat down with Linda and Vince. And I think Stephanie, she must have been, no, not Stephanie, forgotten the guy's name, the son, what's his name?
Shane.
Sorry?
Shane?
Shane, yeah, I think
Shane,
it was. Yeah. I think it was just he was a kid in those days, and I kind of said, we think there's a market for professional wrestling of your standard in the UK, and they kind of looked at each other, and they said, who is this lunatic? You know, what's he talking about? And they said, basically, we're just kind of growing. We're starting to make some bigger venues now, but we don't think, you know, there'll be a market in the UK. I said, well, and then he said the actual phrase, but we are negotiating and we're talking with a TV company, which in those days was Sky B. And I said, well, that's interesting, because Sky was just growing. It was just really getting a big database together. So I said, well, when that happens and when you get the contracts done, and let us know, and that's going to help us. And that was the end of the conversation. We had a very nice time. They took us out for lunch and all that. I had to give them all my bullshit stories about rock and roll and all that stuff, which they like to hear. And so a few months later, they contacted us and they said, yeah, we've signed the deal with Sky, BSB Sky, and we're ready to go. So we then decided to book a venue, which was called the London Arena. And the London Arena was a brand new venue, which had been built in the Docklands, held about 8 to 10,000 people. We put on its very first show with, in fact, Luciano Pavarotti opened it. And then they put together a bill, WWF, with names that Hulk Hogan's and I can't remember who actually was on the bill. I really cannot remember. But anyway, we put one advert in the Sun, one advert in the Mirror, and it sold out in about 1 minute, you know, and nobody could believe it, you know, absolutely. So the guys, they came over. It was the Daily Mirror in particular were behind it. They gave it a big push and they gave it a lot of airspace or page space, you know. And it was all a very, very exciting time. And obviously, the guys at WWF were delighted. They got paid. We made some money. We sold a lot of T-shirts because, you know, that's what it was all about in those days. And the venue loved it because they besides the audience attendance, they loved the fact that that audience drank a lot of beer, which is always very helpful. Because they can, you know, they take a lot of income from the, you know, the catering and the beer side, and they loved all that stuff, you know, because that's the best thing, you know. If your guys turn up, they don't drink anything, the bar takings mean nothing. But so we then, everyone was very happy. So we then went on a kind of a series. I'm not sure what year it was, quite truthfully, a series of dates around the country. Some of them were, I would say they were all sold out, whatever. The word had got around, the newspapers had got behind it, and it was a success. And that's how it went. By then, we had the rights to be a licensing agent for toys, T-shirts, anything we could sell a license on. And for about, you know, we set up this licensing company. It wasn't really our business at the time, but within a year or so, we had a whole roster of licenses of, you know, whether it's posters or books or toys or flags or T-shirts, you know, and they're all, the actual merchandising so it became a big item in retail. Which was, and that well, it still continues today, obviously, as we know, you know, it's still on today. And I think maybe it's gone beyond its heyday, but in its heyday, you know, if you went into Toys R Us or Woolworths, particularly Woolworths, who were really behind it, there was a whole area which was dedicated to World Wrestling merchandising. And then, of course, Sky saw the real potential, and they probably had maybe 3 or 4 shows a week in with WWF, and this was just about, WWF was still there, it hadn't changed into E. And do you want to know the story of E?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, this is the story of E. I received a letter, by then we were selling on QVC, Shopping Channel, which did phenomenal business. And one of the I said to America, I said, you need to send over a couple of wrestlers who can appear on the show to give it a hell of a push. So they sent over the Bushwhackers. Give me their names.
Luke and Butch.
Luke, that's it, Luke and Butch. So we set up this Shopping Channel thing. Luke and Butch were the guest stars, and it went down an absolute storm, you know, and we took more money on QVC on that show than they'd ever before, because although in this country shopping channels were in their infancy, but World Wrestling Federation merchandise kind of really set them up in those days. And I always remember the guys, you know, they're there in their uniform, in their outfits, you know, their kind of camouflage suit used to wear, didn't they, and that kind of stuff. And I thought they were great. So I thought, I'll tell you what, boys, we're going to go out for dinner after the show to celebrate. And so what I did, I purposely booked a very, very smart upmarket restaurant, very smart, only full of hooray Henrys and people who lived in you know, in the highest echelons of establishment, because I thought if I went into this restaurant with these two guys, it would cause a sensation. So we walked into a restaurant. It was in a store actually out on the 5th floor called Harvey Nichols, very expensive, very upmarket, very trendy. And we walked in, and the whole place kind of turned around. Horror! Who in the fuck are these two lunatics? Because they were wearing their outfits. You can imagine it, can't you? And they were like their kind of knives and forks, like in suspension. What the hell is this all about? You know. But what happened was, all the staff knew instantly who they were. They knew exactly, all the waiters and all the bar staff knew who they were. You know? So we had a great evening because we were treated royally, because the staff knew exactly, and all these other people sitting there with their mouths open. We also did a show with Hulk Hogan. He was selling, now what was Hulk Hogan? A barbecue set, you know, like the famous boxer had this kind of barbecue.
George Foreman grill. Yep.
There was a Hulk Hogan grill. Did you know that?
I knew something. I knew he had like the Hulk Hogan blender thing, but yeah.
Yeah, but he had a Hulk Hogan grill. Turns out to be whoever he did it, they tried to rip him off, and the whole thing was a disaster. But Hulk Hogan came over, and he asked me to meet him at the airport, which I met him at the airport. We arrived at his hotel, and as we arrived at the hotel in Victoria, the same time a whole huge a coach load full of Japanese businessmen all came out the coach. Exactly the same time as Hulk Hogan came out of the car, and suddenly there was this Hogan, and all kind of rushing towards him. It was the funniest thing ever. And I'm standing there trying to hold them all back, you know. And he said, "Get me out of here, for God's sake!" You know, they all went absolutely crazy for it. That was another good story. Right, next.
Thanks. Well, I want to let everybody know that's watching and enjoying these stories. You had everything to do with SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium in 1992. And people are gonna ask why I'm not asking questions about it, because you are going to be this weekend with Paul Benson and Hooked on Wrestling, which we are proudly, I'm madly trying to get him some of the talent that appeared on the show.
Okay, really? Okay.
Which I'm having zero luck, but I'm going to keep trying. A lot of these older guys, the good thing is he's doing it as a fundraiser for the Cauliflower Alley Club over here, which what they do is they give back to wrestlers who are maybe down on their luck, health-wise, financially. So I think it's a great thing. Paul Benson and Hooked on Wrestling always do great things, but this is even a better cause. So I'm trying to reach out to people and go, hey, including Luke Williams, Mr. Bushwhacker. We'll try to get some of these guys.
Okay. That'd be good to get him on.
It would be.
Jimmy Hart, he would do it, wouldn't he?
I believe Paul's already got Jimmy Hart, Tito Santana, Road Warrior Animal. He's got a handful.
I saw the Roadrunner. I saw the Roadrunner in the States at that event. I've actually found. Here we are. If you remember that.
Oh yeah.
That's the program. That's the $100,000. Anybody got it? And pay for that. And I'll give it half to the charity. That was the original program from that day. Yeah. And the funny thing about it, that event was put together within weeks. I think the guys had about a month or 3 to 4 weeks to put the whole thing together. And the fact that it all happened so quickly and sold out in 10 minutes was an immense tribute to World Wrestling Federation and Vince and all his team, and of course these guys, it was a sensational event. And also, interestingly enough, because the way that a wrestling stadium is set out, all it is one area, which is the square, the ring, and that's it, and all the rest of it on the floor are seats. So, which enabled probably another 10 to 15,000 people inside Wembley Stadium that would be there for a rock show, because there was no locking off of one end of the venue, because everything, so the tickets were sold out very, very quickly. We, as a company, put in a huge amount of merchandising for that particular event, and for many, many years, we still hold the world record for most money taken at that kind of event. Probably only been beaten by NFL or Bruce Springsteen or something like that, but it's stood for many, many years. If you ask me, can I remember the event and what went on in the ring, the answer is no. I was more worried about what went on around the arena and outside, but people still talk about it as if it was one of the greatest events that ever happened, in stadium history. And it still is, actually.
Right. And what really stands out is that the match, of course, you're busy, but the British Bulldog versus Bret the Hitman Hart, that is
absolutely
an iconic match.
Let me show you a picture, a photo of, I'm very proud of this photo, actually. I don't know whether you can, now, that's the British Bulldog. Who's the guy with the hair? Can you see it?
Yeah, I got to put my spectacles on here.
Have a guess.
I don't have it.
Who was Stairway to Heaven?
Oh,
that's Robert Plant.
It's Robert Plant.
That's Robert Plant there. And then obviously one of them is his sons. I'm not quite sure what. I presume the other son is the British Bulldog's son, Harry.
Harry, yeah.
Yeah. So the British Robert Plant, who I still talk to today, he always remembers that day. He said it was a great day, and he didn't know anything about British Bulldog. He knew nothing about anybody, but he had a great time, and so did his son, obviously.
You know why I would have never guessed Robert Plant, because in that picture he looks like he could go a couple of rounds with the Bulldog.
But maybe he was tall. He's not that big, but he's tall. His hair hasn't changed. It's still the same hair today. And of course, my other interesting, here I'll put this on. Hang a second. Now this suit, this jacket's been seen before, but I'll put it on. As you can see, it's a bit tight on me, but this is Jimmy gave it to me.
Oh,
yeah, he gave it to me, and it had all these kind of paintings of the guys who were there on that day, the Summerslam Jacket, which is still obviously iconic. You can see who that is, can't you?
Yeah, Ted DiBiase and IRS Mike Rotundo. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then not only that, my boy, here's the Summerslam trousers.
Trousers.
This is the SummerSlam trousers.
Fantastic.
Probably the only one in the world still around, I should think. SummerSlam trousers. You can see that.
Yep, that is amazing.
What's even more remarkable, what I find it remarkable, is that when you look inside the trousers, they're expanding, by the way. So they start off at size 30 and they got a side zip that fits me 36 today. But on the inside of the trouser, something I could never believe in a million years, this brand, can you read it? Christian Dior.
Christian Dior. Wow.
I bet if Christian Dior said that, he would have turned in his grave. But anyway, Christian Dior trousers. Can you believe it? Yeah.
That's amazing.
So when I got an award as the Wrestling Hall of Fame man, this is with
Jeff Jarrett, right?
Jeff. I put that thing on, and everybody stood up and clapped. I knew they weren't clapping me. I think they were clapping the suits.
Either way, right?
So that's that story. Anyway,
so we're gonna leave. I want to leapfrog over because I want to leave that for Hooked on Wrestling and Paul Benson. A lot of the SummerSlam stuff.
Fine.
Talk about working with TNA and Jeff Jarrett. Now, are you working separately with them? Go ahead.
Yeah. Our relationship with WWE by then ended after about 12 or 14 years. And I still had this fondness for wrestling anyway. It always made us money. It was always great fun, and we had a good time. Although I neglected a lot of my business because to concentrate on pro wrestling. But anyway, I then had a call from Jeff, who told me that he'd set up this company with his father, and they want to kind of expand it out of the areas they were in, and they'd been talking to some powerful backers, which obviously was the Carter family, as you know, Dixie Carter, and can we help him? You know, and again, it was like a deja vu of what happened 15 years ago, probably, or 20 years ago, where obviously the important part was to get TNA a slot on TV, which luckily we had a good team around and guys who understood the selling of wrestling, and by then the names who were part of TNA weren't that kind of major at the time. They were kind of young guys coming up, but Jeff did a great job in putting that whole company together and making sure that, you know, the production was pretty good, and that the guys really put their heart and soul into it. And then Dixie Carter came in through the Carter family, and they had a huge amount of input financially to take TNA onto a different level. But by then we had a slot sold on TV. It wasn't on one of the major channels. It was a kind of a smallish channel that, but because there was a lot of buzz about the whole world of wrestling, mainly through obviously WWE, the Daily Mirror and various things are going on. Various guys have set up their own publication companies and magazines, and so there was a market to take them on, to take on W. Of course, the aim was TNA were going to take on WWE. Obviously, we set up the first tour was 3 or 4 venues around the country, kind of smaller venues, which were mainly used for boxing. There was one in Liverpool, a small venue in town in London. We did one in Belfast. I managed to talk a Belfast promoter into putting them into Belfast, and it was good. You know, it sold tickets. It wasn't crazy. It sold tickets. Merchandise sales were great. You know, really good considering there were brands that didn't really mean too much in that marketplace, but it was pretty good actually. And we then, by then we could see the potential. The TV channel had changed into a much bigger viewership. We were getting some really decent figures together. We then decided to go down the same route by expanding our marketplace by going from small 1200 seat, which was much bigger than what they were doing in America anyway at the time, because they were just kind of pretty average figures in the States. But we brought them in, and I was speaking to a major promoter who's used to selling out big venues, and he took it on. He took the gamble. And we were just the merchandiser and licensing thing. Another promoter came in and took it on. We did 8 tours, actually. Yes, 8 tours. And probably the first we did try to break Europe, but it never really took on, basically because of the lack of TV. And then also Germany, which was the big company, suddenly decided that wrestling should be put on 1 in the morning. You know, they wouldn't give it prominence, so between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. So that market had gone. We did tour a couple of European countries. I think we went to Belgium. I think we did go to Germany, and we went to Switzerland with TNA. It's a good attendance, good response. And by then, TNA branding, they decided in their wisdom to bring the legends in. And who do I have to talk to the next time they turn up? You know who it was, don't you? The Hulkster, of course. The Hulkster, who became my brother. Hey, brother, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. So, you know, we went through that whole period where the legends suddenly came in, and the buzz was even better. A lot of the shows were taken. They were filmed for TV, which in a way I never really agreed on, because somehow the atmosphere changes. You know, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe there's more gaps in between the action, but I think the production and what went on in the ring was as good as anything I'd seen for years. You know, and I love working with them. It was really good. We thought we were going to conquer the world, actually, but we didn't. We didn't. It all kind of disintegrated when I think the overhead of running Hulk Hogan and all those other legends became too heavy. It was too heavy, and by then the new guys hadn't really created their own space. But we could see that a lot of what was really good for us as well, we wanted a younger audience. We didn't want the old timers who've been going to WWF, WWE. We wanted to expand into a younger market where we knew we could sell toys and we could sell more merchandising and change the demographic of the audience. And we were getting there. But in the end, it all kind of disintegrated. So that was the end of that one. But it was good times. Yeah. Dixie, I mean, there's been a lot of bad vibes about that period with Dixie, but personally, I think she was great, you know, and she was good for the whole thing. But maybe her ambition didn't make commercial sense. And maybe it did. I don't know. So TNA as a brand still exists. We have not had, I mean, we work with Anthem, who are the owners of TNA now. We just run their merchandising store around the world. And they, so far under their new ownership, they haven't come back to the UK, but I'm sure it will happen one day. Absolutely positive.
Well, yeah, Impact Wrestling now is probably, they just had a pay-per-view in July that was probably one of the better pay-per-views that I've seen all year. Really making it fresh and exciting again. So hopefully they get over to the United States.
They do.
When
they deserve
things get crazy.